Section. Introduction. We're here to discuss a fascinating development in the field of machine learning, specifically focusing on transformer-based language learning models, LLMs. Since their inception, these models have proven to be incredibly effective across a range of machine learning tasks. They've become the gold standard for understanding and interpreting natural language, and have also shown potential in areas like computer vision and reinforcement learning. However, these transformer models are notoriously large, requiring significant computational resources for both training and inference. This is intentional, as larger models with more parameters or data are generally more capable than their smaller counterparts. But interestingly, recent studies suggest that these models, and neural networks in general, don't need all their parameters to maintain their learned knowledge. While it's beneficial to have a large number of parameters during training, these models can be significantly pruned before inference, often removing over 90% of their weights without any significant drop in performance. This discovery has sparked interest in the relationship between generalization and overparameterization, leading to research into pruning strategies that allow for efficient model inference. In this paper, we present an intriguing finding. Careful pruning at specific layers of transformer models can significantly improve performance on certain tasks. We introduce a method called layer-selective rank reduction, LAYER, which removes higher-order components of learned weight matrices identified by singular value decomposition. This reduction is performed on specific weight matrices and layers of the transformer model. Consistent with previous work, we find that many of these matrices can be significantly reduced without any noticeable drop in performance until over 90% of components are completely removed. But here's where our findings diverge from previous work. We find that these reductions can lead to significant improvements in accuracy, as measured by various well-established reasoning benchmarks in natural language processing, NLP. Even more exciting, this discovery isn't limited to natural language. We also see performance gains in reinforcement learning. We also analyze the relationship between the model's training data and samples that benefit from LAYER. We find that improvements in the model's performance mainly come from information less frequently present in the model's training dataset. This suggests that LAYER acts as a kind of denoising procedure, making weakly learned facts more accessible. We also observe that LAYER increases robustness to paraphrases on previously correct questions. Furthermore, we try to understand what is stored in high-order components, such that their removal boosts performance. For questions correctly answered only after LAYER, the original model predominantly responds with high-frequency words such as the, of, etc. These responses are not even the same semantic type as the correct answer. However, after some amount of rank reduction, the model's answer flips to be correct. To understand this, we look at what the remaining components encode on their own. We find that these components describe either a different response of the same semantic category as the correct answer or generic high-frequency words. It seems that when the noisy, higher-order components are combined with the low-order components, their conflicting responses produce an average answer, which is likely to be incorrect. We visualize the transformer architecture and the procedure followed by LAYER in the main figure. Here, the weight matrix of a multi-layer perceptron, MLP, at a specific layer is replaced with its low-rank approximation. To our knowledge, this paper is the first to identify that carefully selected rank reductions can boost transformer performance. However, there are many related studies, including how facts are stored in LLMs and how to best compress neural networks. Some studies show that models store factual information across different layers and that model robustness to distribution shift can be improved by fine-tuning select layers. However, there is conflicting evidence on how this information is organized and utilized in constructing answers in large language models. This paper doesn't make specific claims regarding locality, but rather demonstrates that higher-order components of a weight matrix can introduce noise in decision-making, and considering only lower-order components may make correct answers accessible. Section Summary. Transformer-based language models, LLMs, have been successful in various machine learning tasks, but their large size requires significant computational resources. However, recent research suggests that not all parameters are necessary for retaining learned hypotheses, and careful pruning of specific layers in transformer models can lead to significant performance improvements. This paper introduces layer-selective rank reduction, LAYER, a pruning intervention that removes higher-order components of weight matrices, resulting in boosts in accuracy for reasoning tasks in natural language processing and reinforcement learning. The reductions provided by LAYER seem to denoise weakly learned facts and improve robustness to paraphrases. Section. Model compression. We're going to talk about model compression, specifically in the context of neural networks. Researchers have discovered that we can significantly trim down these models, often removing more than 90% of their parameters, without a substantial loss in accuracy. This makes the models much less demanding in terms of storage. Some methods even prune these models in a structured way, which can speed up the time it takes to make inferences. This concept of sparse sub-networks applies to various types of models, including convolutional, fully connected, and transformer models. Some studies suggest that by pruning and then refitting parameters, we can improve a model's ability to generalize. However, this improvement is typically only seen after the model has been retrained. Historically, model pruning techniques have reduced parameters across the board, without focusing on any specific layers. This usually results in the model's predictive performance staying the same or even decreasing. But in our work, we've found that the impact of accuracy reduction varies across different layer types. We've discovered that we can enhance a model's ability to generalize by selectively pruning it, without needing any additional training. In simple terms, we've found that reducing the rank of early layers can lead to performance degradation, while pruning later layers can significantly improve performance. Most pruning methods reduce parameters based on their absolute magnitude. An alternative approach is to reduce the rank of the weight matrices, keeping the top k components found by singular value decomposition, SVD. This approach has been used to approximate matrices of neural models, including transformer models. While this can preserve the model's behavior even when it's significantly reduced, research has shown that performance eventually declines as the intervention becomes more severe. In contrast to these findings, we've found that a targeted rank reduction, even if it only affects a single weight matrix, can improve the predictive accuracy of transformers. There have been attempts to train smaller networks to mimic the behavior of larger networks, suggesting that neural networks might be significantly overparameterized and can be replaced with leaner alternatives. However, there's no evidence to suggest that this procedure improves the model's predictions. In terms of mathematical notation, we use RR to represent real numbers, NN for natural numbers, lowercase letters like V to represent a d-dimensional vector, and uppercase letters like W to represent a matrix of size, m by n. We use v underscore 2 feet to represent the Euclidean norm of a vector, v, and w underscore 2 feet to represent the spectral norm of a matrix, w. We use n to represent the set, 1, 2, n. We use rank, w, to represent the rank of a matrix, w, and sigma down pointing arrow I, w, to represent its ith largest singular value. Now, let's talk about the transformer architecture. A transformer architecture can be thought of as L layers of transformer blocks. Each block maps a sequence of t-length vector sequence to another t-length vector sequence, where all vectors are d-dimensional. This transformation is accomplished using two sequential steps: a self-attention mechanism to mix information across time steps, and a feed-forward network to process information within each time step. In a single-head self-attention mechanism, each vector, h_i, is mapped to a query vector, q_i, a key vector, k_i, and a value vector, v_i. We then compute attention probabilities for every I, j, in T. These are used to compute the attention vector, z_i. A, k, head self-attention computes a set of k attention vectors by using different linear transformations for key, query, and value, and then concatenates these attention vectors. Finally, the self-attention mechanism outputs u_i using a projection matrix, w_o. The feed-forward step applies a two-layer multi-layer perception, MLP, to each vector, u_i, separately. The MLP typically has a ReLU or JLU activation function, and in some models, the bias of linear layers is set to 0. The output of this L-TH transformer block is then given by H_L_I equals psi, u_i, plus u_i. In summary, a transformer architecture has the following weight matrices for each layer, in addition to the embedding matrix for embedding input tokens, a projection weight matrix applied after the final layer before taking softmax, and all weight matrices associated with layer normalization. In our work, we primarily focus on these matrices and intervene by modifying them. Section summary. Neural network pruning methods have shown that models can be significantly reduced in size without sacrificing much accuracy, but previous techniques have not targeted specific layers. However, this work demonstrates that selectively pruning certain layers can actually improve the model's performance without the need for additional training. Additionally, the paper provides an overview of the transformer architecture and its core components, including the self-attention mechanism and feed-forward network. Section: Rank Approximation and SVD. Let's delve into the concept of rank approximation and singular value decomposition, SVD. Imagine we have a matrix, which we'll call W, and it's part of a set of real numbers arranged in an m by n grid. We also have a number, R, which is a natural number. The challenge here is to find another matrix, let's call it W hat, that is as close as possible to our original matrix W, but has a rank of R or less. The Eckert-Young-Mirsky theorem provides a solution to this problem using a method called singular value decomposition, SVD. In simple terms, SVD breaks down a matrix, W, into three components, U, sigma, and V. U and V are square matrices of size m by m and n by n respectively, and their columns form a set of mutually perpendicular unit vectors, or an orthonormal basis, for the spaces they represent. Sigma, on the other hand, is a rectangular matrix of size m by n, and its diagonal entries are the singular values of W, arranged in descending order. We can also express the SVD of W as a sum of products of singular values and corresponding vectors from U and V according to the Eckert-Young-Mirsky theorem. The matrix W hat, which is a sum of the first R terms of this series, is the best approximation to W with rank R or less. In this study, we use the term higher-order components to refer to the parts of the SVD that correspond to smaller singular values. These components are removed by a method we call laser. On the other hand, lower-order components refer to the vectors associated with larger singular values. These components are retained in a low-rank approximation of the matrix. Now, let's talk about laser, or layer-selective rank reduction. This method involves three parameters, tau, L, and rho. Tau refers to the type of matrix we're dealing with, L refers to the layer number where we're applying the intervention, and rho describes the fraction of the maximum rank that we want to preserve in the low-rank approximation. We focus on 6 types of matrices found in the MLP and attention layers of a neural network. The layer number tells us which layer we're working on, starting from 0. For instance, a model called Llama 2 has 32 layers, so L can be any number from 0 to 31. Rho, a number between 0 and 1, tells us what fraction of the maximum rank we want to keep when we create the low-rank approximation. An example of laser is shown in the main figure. Here, tau equals U underscore n and L equals L, indicating that we're updating the weight matrix in the first layer of the MLP in the transformer block of the LTH layer. Another parameter, not shown in the figure, controls the rank of the approximation. Interestingly, laser can control the flow of certain information in the network, which can lead to significant performance improvements. We can also combine multiple interventions in any order. The goal of laser is to search for the best interventions and apply the one that offers the greatest benefit. In the experiments section, we study the effects of laser on various layers of the transformer architecture. We start with an analysis of the counter-fact question answering dataset using a pre-trained GPTJ model, and examine the model's performance as we explore potential interventions. Then, we investigate the impact of laser on different models, datasets, and modalities. Section Summary. The rank approximation and SVD section discusses the problem of finding a matrix approximation with a desired rank using singular value decomposition, SVD. The Eckert-Young-Mirsky theorem provides an optimal solution to this problem. The laser intervention is introduced, which involves replacing certain matrices with low-rank approximations to improve network performance. The section also mentions the possibility of combining multiple laser interventions and presents the experiments conducted to evaluate the impact of laser on the transformer architecture. Section GPTJ, Counterfact and Pile. We've been working with the GPTJ model, which has 27 layers and 6 billion parameters, and was trained on the Pile dataset. We chose to focus on GPTJ because its training data is publicly accessible. We tested the model's performance using the counterfact dataset, which is structured as tuples of subject, relation, answer, and includes 3 rephrased prompts for each question. For instance, a tuple might look like this: Danielle Deroux, Mother Tongue, French. We conducted a comprehensive analysis of GPT-J's performance on the counterfacts dataset. We experimented with reducing the rank of each matrix in the transformer architecture and observed the impact on the classification loss for this dataset. Each transformer layer is made up of a small, two-layer MLP, multi-layer perceptron, and we examined the input and output matrices separately. We used different colors to represent different percentages of removed components. Our findings confirmed what we already knew about these models. We can significantly reduce the weight matrices without significantly affecting the model's performance. However, we found something more interesting in the MLP layers. Not only can we reduce the rank of matrices without affecting classification performance, but we can also improve performance by reducing the later layers of the model. This trend is most noticeable in the input matrix of the MLP. While we also saw improvements in the attention layers using the laser method, the benefits were generally smaller. In the following section, we demonstrate the effectiveness of the laser method across a variety of datasets and transformer models. Because a thorough search can be computationally demanding, and the most consistent improvements seem to be in reducing the MLP layers, we decided to focus our search on these layers in the results that follow. We used the counterfacts dataset to test the model's factual knowledge of data from Wikipedia. Since GPT-J was trained on Pile, which includes Wikidata, different facts in counterfacts are part of the model's training data, although in varying amounts. We calculated top K accuracy based on whether the correct answer was among the top K predicted tokens. We found that the model's top 1 accuracy on facts in counterfacts increased from 13.3% to 24.1% when reductions were made on a single layer. It's important to note that these improvements were achieved solely through rank reduction, without any additional training or fine-tuning of the pre-trained GPT-J model. We also evaluated the model's robustness to paraphrases by calculating the percentage of data points where the model correctly answered all paraphrases of a given question. For data points that the model already answered correctly, the model's robustness to paraphrases also improved with the laser method by approximately 24.8 percentage points. We then looked at the impact of reduction on the model's performance on other metrics. We evaluated the model's perplexity, which is its original training objective, on its training data. For layers corresponding to the MLP input matrices, the perplexity of the model increased slightly from 4.8 to 5.0. For the MLP output layers, the perplexity of GPT-J on Pile increased from 4.8 to 4.9 with the laser method. This slight degradation could potentially be fixed by adjusting the model's temperature. We found that we could further improve the model's performance by performing different amounts of rank reduction across several layers. We did this by greedily searching over tau, L, and rho, starting from the largest L and smallest rho. To speed things up, we only did this search over MLP layers, as this is where we typically found the largest improvements. The base GPT-J model had a 0 to 1 accuracy of 13.1% on counterfacts. After applying the best single-step laser method, the model's accuracy improved to 24.0%. By applying the laser method across different layers, we improved the top 10 accuracy to 29.2%, a 5.2% absolute improvement in accuracy over applying the laser method on a single layer. Section Summary. The authors used the GPT-J model pre-trained on the Pile dataset to analyze its behavior on the counterfacts dataset. They find that reducing the rank of weight matrices in the MLP layers of the model can improve classification performance without degrading it. The model's accuracy on factual knowledge increases from 13.3% to 24.1% with rank reduction, and its robustness to paraphrases improves by roughly 24.8 percentage points. Additionally, the reduction slightly affects the model's language modeling objective, but this can potentially be mitigated by calibrating the temperature of the model. Further improvements in performance are achieved by performing rank reduction across multiple layers. Section. Which facts in the dataset are recovered by rank reduction? We're trying to understand which facts in our dataset are brought to light by reducing the rank. To do this, we examine the questions that are correctly answered after using a technique called laser and how frequently the information related to the question shows up in the training data. For every data point in a dataset we call counterfacts, we find all the examples in another dataset, Pile, that mention both the entity and the answer. We then calculate how often the information related to each evaluation question appears in the training data. We discover that the facts that are brought to light when we reduce the rank are most likely to be those that don't show up very often in the data. We use terms like originally correct to describe samples that are correctly classified even without any intervention. Answer corrected refers to questions that the model only gets right after we intervene with LAyer. We also want to understand what the higher order components are storing. We've seen that keeping the lower order components improves the model's performance on the task of open-ended question answering. We find that for this task, improvements often come on questions whose answers are supported by data that doesn't show up very often in the training set. While it's clear that getting rid of the higher order components cleans up the model and helps bring out less common information, it's not clear what the higher order components are representing that their removal improves performance. To understand what higher order components are representing, we approximate the final weight matrix using its higher order components. We then analyze how the model's behavior changes on data points that the model originally gets wrong but are flipped to being correct upon performing LAyer. We note that when the original, unmodified model doesn't answer these questions correctly, it often responds with common words. After performing LAyer, where we keep only the top K components, the model's answers to these questions flip from generic words to the correct entity. However, when we approximate the model by instead keeping the higher order components, we find that the model either predicts incorrect entities that are of the same semantic type as the correct answer or high-frequency tokens. As we systematically include the lower order components, the model's output changes to predicting frequent tokens. We measure the average cosine similarity of the true answer with respect to the predicted answer when the matrix is approximated with different amounts of higher order components. The average cosine similarity between the predicted answer worsens. We hypothesize that these matrices often encode multiple conflicting responses, and that when all components are used, they clash to produce a generic token. Removing the higher order components, which seem to often capture incorrect responses of the correct type, resolves this internal conflict and allows the model to respond accurately. We test the generality of our findings on 3 different language models for several language understanding tasks. We evaluate model performance before and after LAyer on 7 datasets. These datasets evaluate different aspects of language understanding problems. For each of these tasks, we evaluate the model's performance using generation accuracy, classification accuracy, and loss. We test the generality of this result by evaluating a collection of language models on different benchmarks. We find that even severe reductions result in no deterioration in the model's accuracy and can lead to improvements in their performance. The amount of reduction required differs from model to model. Section Summary. When analyzing the counterfact dataset and GPTJ, we observe that rank reduction tends to recover facts that are infrequently present in the training data. Retaining lower-order components improves model performance on open-ended question-answering tasks, while removing higher-order components resolves internal conflicts and allows the model to respond accurately. This finding holds true across different language understanding tasks and various language models. Section. Non-text domains. We're going to explore whether the phenomenon we've been discussing is applicable beyond the realm of text-based question answering. To do this, we'll examine the impact of rank reduction on a reinforcement learning agent. We'll be conducting our tests in a challenging environment known as the Sokoban domain, which is a grid that measures 10 by 10. In this domain, we'll be focusing on policy learning. To evaluate policy learning, we'll be using a tool called LAyer on a model known as a decision transformer. This model has been trained on the game of Sokoban and will be evaluated on the same game. Sokoban is a complex planning game where the agent's task is to move and push several blocks into holes. The task is considered complete when all blocks are positioned over the holes. The decision transformer takes in the visual state of the environment at a given moment as input, and outputs the low-level action to be taken. Our findings show that decision transformers trained on Sokoban were able to solve 3% more tasks when LAyer was used. Although this improvement may seem small, it's consistent, even when reductions are performed severely. This could suggest that the phenomenon we're studying is either specific to text, or it requires a transformer model of a certain size. For more details on the experiment, you can refer to the section on transformers in the appendix.